All right, welcome to the Krueg Show, everybody. Hope everybody's having a phenomenal day. It was NBA trade deadline day. But we're talking football. We've got great Vish Kumaran in the house. Vish, good to see you. We can give the band the rest of the night off. Guys, thanks. Appreciate it. Have a good one. How you doing, man? Good to see you.
I'm good, Larry. How are you? It's
man.
been so long since we last talked.
I know, seriously. It's been, 2 days, and so much has happened in Niner land in the last couple of days. Well, we shouldn't, that's probably not true, but
no, actually, kind of.
Well, a little bit.
Yeah.
In fact, we got something to get to tonight because Nick Bosa is your AP Defensive Player of the Year. I don't know if you saw that. That was big news today. He wins the Defensive Player of the Year award. He receives 46 of the 50 first place votes. And Bosa takes home the hardware Thursday night as Micah Parsons was the odds-on favorite for much of the year. He did not receive a single first place vote. The other players who did were the Chiefs monster tackle Chris Jones and Eagles pass rusher Hassan Reddick. They garnered 2 votes each, but Bosa had a short speech, short and sweet. It's a team sport. I just do my job. I mean, it's just incredible. But what a season he had, Vish. He led the NFL, 18 and a half sacks, 2 more than Reddick and Myles Garrett. He also had the most quarterback hits with 48. He had 19 tackles for loss. That was second in the NFL. And, I think everybody kind of thought he was going to win the award, and sure enough, he did. What about Nick Bosa to you stood out about his season this year?
The consistency. He was from week 1 to week 18, really. He played well. I would say he really had one bad game, I thought, throughout the season, and that was the Chiefs game. That was the one game that he didn't play that well. And I thought he got thrown off a little bit because if you remember early in the game, he had those 3 neutral zone infraction penalties called on him early, and it felt like that kind of just threw him off because he was conscious about that the entire game. But besides that, he was fantastic every game of the season. He played the run really well. He obviously rushed the passer very effectively. He was clutch, a lot of timely sacks, a lot of timely pressures that created turnovers. And so, yeah, ultimately, if I had to sum up his season into a few words, or if I had to use one word to sum up his season, I would say consistency for sure.
The thing to me that stood out about his season, just watching him every single snap, is how many times you think of him as an awesome edge rusher with moves and leverage. But when you watch him every down, this guy bull rushes way, way more than you would think. And he does it so effectively for a guy who also has speed and moves. I mean, I don't know that I've ever seen a guy who can get the edge and has great hand usage and all kinds. I mean, there is no wasted motion. But then he also reminds me a lot of Charles Haley in that he will go stripe on a stripe, bull rush you, and his bull rush has tremendous strength, but it's the number of times in the game that he'll bull rush that tackle. And it's almost kind of like body shots, I think, for a boxer. And it's the guy's something special, man. He's really something special. And the other thing is, it's like he's really, really good against the run. I thought, I mean, if you run towards him, he takes it very personally. And I love the way he plays the run.
Yeah, he's exceptionally powerful. I remember Robert Saleh said he's the strongest defense, or one of the strongest defensive ends in the NFL, I think when he was a rookie or in his second year. So that, pays the utmost compliment to his strength. I would say, just like you said, it's the bull rush, right? But he has everything to his game, right? He has the ability to beat you with speed and bend around the edge. He's so flexible and he's so nimble and bending around the edge for such a big guy. And he gets so low to the ground when he does it. He can beat you with his bull rush. He usually bull rushes early in the game because you can see him testing the tackle strength to see if he could just go straight through him. And if he can, it's game over, because if you're nervous about his bull rush, it opens up everything else in his game. He's got an inside move. He's got that double-handed scissor swipe that, the Bosa brothers have made famous. And then he also added a spin move. we haven't seen that spin move. His first, I don't remember if he had the spin move, to be honest, in 2021. I'm having a little trouble remembering that, but I know that he's added that spin move kind of recently. His brothers had it for a couple of years, but he didn't have it in his first 2 years for sure. And so him adding that to me makes him that much better, that much more complete. And you're absolutely right. The way he plays the run is phenomenal. He's really strong at the point of attack. He's very disciplined. And then the other thing I think while we're talking about the run is how much of a team pass rusher he is. Rarely do you see him rushing outside of his lane or, doing something kind of crazy to pad his stats or get a sack. He rushes with great lane integrity, and he does a really, really good job rushing to the game plan. And like, for example, I thought the Eagles game was a great example of how he kept his level even with Jalen Hurts, and he didn't go past Hurts to ensure that he couldn't step through him. And those are things that I think are resounding, because not only is he this amazing, talented football player, he does the little details for the team, the little sacrifices as well. And I think that's what makes him, one of those once in a generation kind of franchise defensive players, right? There's very few of them in the NFL, and he's one of them.
It's funny. Sometimes you think about what's the greatest thing you can say about NFL players, and we saw it with Rice, and I think we see it now with Bosa. The greatest of greats draw a boatload of penalties against the guys who are trying to defend them or go against them. In this case, block Nick Bosa, draw a ton of penalties. And that really speaks to how great a player is. If you can make a guy, hold you, it's almost like he's basically saying, I can't block you, so I'm just going to hold you. Or, Jerry, I can't cover you, so I'm just going to grab you and hold on. Jerry drew a ton of penalties. Bosa draws a ton of penalties. That really stands out. Another significant moment for the Niners tonight is that thanks to Nick Bosa, D'Amico Ryans wins the NFL Assistant Coach of the Year award. Well-deserved for D'Amico. This is at the NFL Honors Awards ceremony that's being held at the Super Bowl. And D'Amico beat out the Eagles offensive coordinator Shane Steichen and the Lions OC Ben Johnson. And, man, D'Amico had an incredible year. Niners defense was ranked in the top 5 in almost every single category. And obviously, D'Amico's now moving on. He's the head coach of the Houston Texans. What players, what coaches does he take with him? That's one of the themes of the offseason. What do you think? I mean, now that we've had a couple days to, digest everything with D'Amico out and Steve Wilks in, what's your thought on what the 49ers are losing and gaining?
Yeah, and I think this is kind of hard for me to completely talk about, not because the topic has any difficulty, just because I don't want to sound like I'm discrediting D'Amico Ryans, because I really did think he did a great job. I think he's well deserved of the award. He just won Assistant Coach of the Year, and he's also well deserving of the Texans head coaching job. But I don't think the Niners are losing that much, and it's because the philosophy and culture of this defense remains. And I keep saying, Larry, I think this is the 4th or 5th time you've heard me say it, Baltimore Ravens-esque, right? It's built around Bosa and Warner. The philosophy is the same. They're going to be, in their base, that 4-3 front, and they're going to, play the same fronts that they usually play, be a one-gap team, do what they do. And they're going to play quarters. They're going to play cover 3, but they're going to rush the passer and play zone behind it. That's what they want to do. And that's where I think if you find very talented players, which the 49ers have, you find a coordinator who's a good communicator, which Steve Wilks is, as well as D'Amico Ryans was, then it's just about, you have your base defense, you know what you're going to do. It's about finding your creativity on third down. And Robert Saleh really found his creativity in 2019 and 2020. D'Amico Ryans was exceptionally creative, adding all those little creepers and sim pressures and all those little things they did, from the double mug looks and then all the stunts and all the things they did up front. D'Amico Ryans was very, very creative there. And then he added in more looks of man coverage to this defense. And ultimately, I think Steve Wilkes' sprinkle is going to be even more man coverage. He plays a lot more single high. They played a lot more single high in Carolina. Now, I do think that was a product of Carolina having some very good corners, right? J.C. Horn's a hell of a player. But I think ultimately the Niners are going to look to bring Emmanuel Mosley back, and we're going to see them play a little bit more man coverage, and that's going to be Steve Wilkes' wrinkle. But again, not to discredit D'Amico Ryans, but the more I digest it, I don't think the Niners are going to miss him that much at all.
I mean, the one thing about D'Amico is the guys really did have a great love and respect for him, and they played with their hair on fire. And I think they really believed in D'Amico, especially the linebackers,
Right.
maybe because he was a linebacker. But just talking to Dre Greenlaw and, Aziz and some of these guys about D'Amico and just the respect that they have for him as a coach. I do think though Wilkes checks a lot of boxes. He's got experience. It's not his first rodeo. He can totally take over that side of the football. They want they need to they got some young DBs and they need to draft some young DBs, and he's a former DB himself, and I think that will help the secondary. I think the pass defense is the area that needs improving the most, and I think obviously Wilkes is a big part of that. And then you don't have to switch your scheme. It's a one gap penetrating 4-3 thing, 4-3 front. And then you've got obviously the D-line coach Kosaric staying on, doing his wide 9. So that kind of jives. I think it all kind of works together. Here's one thing though. And then I want to know if this concerns you. I think Steve Wilkes, clearly you see him speak in a room full of Panther players. He has a presence. He's from what I've heard from Brian Burns, who Jordan Elliott had a great cut from Brian Burns from the Pro Bowl, saying that, he cares about his players as people, not just as football players. To me, that's vital. I know that sounds hokey and high school hairy-ish, but if the guys don't think that you're about them, not like them, the football player, then I think you lose a little bit, and you got to be about your guys. And I think Steve is. I think that's a real strength of his. Here's the concern: if you look at where his defense is ranked recently, 19th, 20th, 26th, and 11th. He's never had an NFL defense in the top 10, let alone the top 5. Also, he's moved a lot. He's had 6 different moves in the NFL in 6 years. He said he had 7 moves in 7 years in the NC2A, which might be actually a good thing, because that means if he gets another head coaching job in a year, they get 2 more third-round compensatory picks. There's that. But how more about the defensive rankings? 19, 20, 26, and 11.
Weren't the 2015 Carolina Panthers top 5?
I guess not. They I know this, they went to the Super Bowl and they blitzed a lot. They blitzed 44% of the time that year, but they must have been 11th. They must have been not quite top 10.
That's shocking to me. I remember.
I read that this week: 19th, 20th, 26th, and 11th. So is that a concern that he hasn't had super high ranking defenses? I mean, it's always hard because you got to go back. I mean, I'm asking you to kind of evaluate players that you don't even know were on those defenses. How much is it the players versus the coordinator? It's almost impossible, but those aren't great rankings.
Oh, okay. McDermott, he only took over in 2017. That's my fault. I forgot McDermott was the coordinator before him. That's what it was. Yeah, you're right. The rankings aren't exactly ideal, and it's not like Carolina has been completely bereft of talent, right? There's a few good players on that defense. Shaq Thompson is quite good. Jeremy Chin is a nice player. Brian Burns is a fantastic player. Derek Brown, I know you love Derek Brown. Larry Krueger loves Derek Brown. We know that. I'm sure this offseason we'll talk a little bit more about trading for Derek Brown, as we always do. But I'm not exactly too concerned, because I think situationally this is a little bit different. I think that instead of completely implementing and teaching and doing what Steve Wilkes does, Steve Wilkes is going to be learning about what the 49ers do and then adding what Steve Wilkes does. And then I think he's going to be taking over. They had talent on those defenses, but that talent is nothing near this. And I just feel like, Larry, again, I keep going back to the word culture. I think they've implemented this culture, they've cultivated it where they play defense a certain type of way in San Francisco, and they play this style and philosophy. And just like it's Hendricks says, it comes down to the players, and it's built around those two, to me, future Hall of Fame players in Nick Bosa and Fred Warner. And those guys set the tone, and they play the same way, and they play really fast, and they play how they play defense, and they really fast and really physical. And so ultimately, Larry, I don't think there's as much pressure on the coordinators. What I'm trying to say, it's not that Saleh wasn't fantastic. He really was. D'Amico was fantastic as well. Maybe Steve Wilks is fantastic. Maybe he isn't. But I think this defense, even when you just play simple stuff and whatever and just do run of the mill stuff, it's so talented that they really can be, top 10, top 5. I mean, remember them in 2020 with all those injuries? I mean, Robert Saleh was in peak creativity, but
the one, by the way, the Panthers this year with Wilks as the defensive coordinator finished 25th in defensive DVOA. Now it's obviously more about the players. He took over for Matt Rule after Rule was fired. And then after Rule was fired, 4 of Carolina's best 5 single season scores came with Wilks in charge of the team. So he did have some success this year.
Can I add one thing to this though?
Sure, absolutely.
I think the other thing is just the offense, right? Carolina has had no semblance of offense when he's had to conduct the defense there. Arizona had Josh Rosen. Obviously, the game is complementary. If you're putting your defense in a lot of shitty spots because your quarterback keeps turning it over, which the Panthers have had that problem, whether it was Sam Darnold, Teddy Two Gloves turned it over a little bit there as well. Cam Newton, post MVP really fell off. His body really gave out on him. And so ultimately, I also think it's not just, I don't think their defenses were ultimately as bad as their rankings. Some of it is just the complementary element of their offense was really bad. They turned it over a lot. They didn't have any way of scoring, so the defense might have had to be a little more aggressive and stuff like that.
We are 17 minutes into this live stream. I'm Larry Krueger, of course, Vish Kumaran with us. We do this, twice a week, Tuesdays on Vish's channel, Thursdays now on the Krueg Show channel. And we appreciate everybody joining us. And I do want to ask you about a couple players that I think might join the 49ers with the new coordinator hire of Steve Wilks. But first, I need to thank our title sponsor, the Pig and a Pickle. That's right. It's the Pig and a Pickle Krueg Show. Pig and a Pickle is a phenomenal barbecue restaurant here in Northern California. Check them out. 341 Corte Madera Town Center in Marin County. They're open 7 days a week in Marin. And then check them out in the Emeryville, in the public marketplace in Emeryville. They're open Wednesday through Sunday in Emeryville. And if you love barbecue, and man, I love barbecue, you are going to love Pig and a Pickle. The brisket, the pulled pork, the baby back ribs, the chicken, the house-made hot links. Damon and Mary, they work at it. They've got a great restaurant. It opens at 11 a.m. in Marin County and closes at 8 p.m. You got to work at it to have a great restaurant, and they do, and it's phenomenal. Absolutely phenomenal. And, some of the sides, I usually go potato salad, beef brisket chili. Ooh. And then I come back with the kettle tallow chips. They have these potato chips they cook in beef fat. Amazing. You must order the potato chips if you go there. They don't have them in Emeryville, though. You got to go over to Marin County. They do catering. They do craft beers. They got a bunch of cool beers there. They have a little kids menu as well. They do family meals, salads. They have an organic mixed green, and then you can throw pulled pork on top of it or beef brisket. They got the hot link sandwich, the chicken salad sandwich, beef brisket sandwich. I had the brisket sandwich the other day. I loved it. Woo-wee. So check them out. Pig and a Pickle, Corte Madera, 341 Corte Madera Town Center, right there in the mall. Killer spot. Really cool. Go in the springtime too. They got the patio. Make sure you go say hi to Damon and Mary. Tell them that Krueg sent you, and check them out in Emeryville, in the Emeryville Public Marketplace. Once again, the Krueg Show brought to you by our good friends at Pig and a Pickle. All right.
That whatever they're paying you for that, they're not paying you enough.
Not paying me enough.
That was awesome.
I mean, seriously. I mean, MF says pig in a pickle, 20 minutes away from Oracle Park. Yes. There you go. MF is a marketer. He's thinking. He's absolutely thinking. BS News says Larry's trying to make Vish hungry.
I'm a vegetarian, so I was not too hungry.
Clarsard says, Larry, can you send me some pig in a pickle through the mail? I'm not from California, unfortunately. Brandon, Larry, I hope you're getting time and a half. You've been streaming all day. Hey, it's NBA trade deadline day, and I got to go. Eric Nelson, Krug, do you get all the free barbecue you can eat? Do I? Yes, I do. Now, I do dine there from time to time, as you can tell. This is body made by BBQ. All right, here we go. Steve Wilkes is the new defensive coordinator. It made me want to look at who the Carolina Panthers defensive free agents are and would any of them fit the 49ers. And when I looked at the list, it's a really short list, but there's two guys that I think are perfect fits, and I wanted to throw them to you, Vish. One is the former commander, if you will, Matthew Ioannidis, who played at Temple. 29-year-old defensive tackle, 6'3", about 310. This guy's tough. He had 32 reps of 225 coming out, so he's really strong. One of the most at the combine. But what I love, it's the motor and the get off, the quickness. And this guy's a team leader. This is like a tone setter. This guy's like a throwback old school tough guy. And I'm just looking at Kinlaw and I'm thinking they got to bolster that tackle spot. And they got to do it in the draft or free agency, obviously. Ioannidis is a good player. I think he's scheme versatile. I think you could play him in a 34 front, but I think you could also play him at tackle in a 43 front. And he's not much of a pass rusher, but you are not moving this guy against the run. He's not going to be pushed around by Jason Kelsey. Ioannidis anchors against the run. And to me, I think they got to address this both in the draft and free agency. And I like Ioannidis. The other one is Corey Littleton, who was terrific with the Rams a few years ago. Then went to the Raiders and just kind of fell off a cliff, and he played for Carolina this year. But if Aziz bolts in free agency and you have Warner and you have Kinlaw and you're looking for like a linebacker that's fast, 4.5 speed, kind of undersized, 6'1", 225, fits the Niner mold, probably reasonable in free agency because he hasn't had big time production years. But I love me some Corey Littleton when he's healthy. And that's a guy, if Aziz jumps, I might want to replace him with Corey Littleton. Give me your thoughts on those two Panthers. Do you see either or both or neither as fits?
Yeah, so we've discussed both of these really quick. Patrick Willis did not make the Hall of Fame, unfortunately. But Zach Thomas did, so Patrick Willis is probably going to make it. Or I think Kuechly might
Willis
be
did not make the Hall?
No, he did not. DeMarcus Ware made it. Rondé Barber finally made it. Revis and Joe Thomas, I think we all figured were going to make it. And then Zach Thomas.
Wow. Zach Thomas. Now that's a story. I loved him at Texas Tech. Jimmy Johnson took him. And small guy, not very tall, not very athletic, but man, he was a damn good football player.
I'm going to be kind of pissed if Kuechly makes it in his first ballot. I don't understand what the resume difference is other than Kuechly got to be in the East Coast, so he got the Defensive Player of the Year votes. And the 49ers sucked, so Willis, in some of Willis's best years, so he couldn't even be in contention.
That's really it right there.
Yeah.
Willis was what we call a
prototype.
Blue
Yeah.
Blue chipper. Yeah, a prototype, exactly.
He had everything you could ever want a linebacker to have. He was so fast, so strong, so physical, smart, instinctive.
Hall of Famer.
God, he was good.
Hall of Famer. Unfortunately got cut short because of the damn toe. How ironic was that this incredible athlete, and yet turf toe, anybody who's ever knows anything about that injury, the whole linebacker thing is to drop and then plant and drive off that turf toe. Puts a lot off that toe, and then when you get turf toe, it's just a debilitating thing, and you can no longer drive, and that's the job of a linebacker. You're supposed to explosively shoot as far back as possible, get a view of the field in a zone, and then plant that ball at your foot and fire forward or in the direction of wherever the pursuit is. And you got to have, believe it or not, turf toe will ruin you if you're a linebacker in coverage. You got to be able to drop. And that was crushing.
Yeah, I mean, I'm blown away that he didn't make it. I don't know. I feel like obviously I'm younger than most, but like Gamer Short said, yeah, to me he was the best linebacker I've ever seen.
Really?
Wagner was really good. Kuechly was really good. I'm a little young for Ray Lewis. That's what I'm saying. So I'm
I mean,
young. I
to
know
me,
that.
LT.
Oh, okay. I was talking more of an inside backer. Yeah, obviously
Well,
LT is probably the best.
how about Junior Seau?
I'm way too young for Junior Seau.
Oh, but you
And
heard of
I
Junior
haven't gone
Seau,
back
right?
and watched Junior Seau. I know his resume, but
Oh, I love Junior. He was incredible.
okay, either way, he was to me, like you said, what if you say what a Hall of Famer should look like when he's in the league, that was Willis. He was the best linebacker in the NFL from day one to the day he retired, basically. He fell off a little bit at the end because of that toe, but he walked in year one as a first team all pro level player. That's unheard of.
I don't even there were some years I wasn't even sure who was better between him and Bowman. I always thought Bowman was super underrated. I mean, Penn
What is it
State
with you and liking
linebacker.
the other linebacker? You thought Greenlow was better than Warner this year. You thought Bowman. I'll
I
tell you
love
this.
Bowman. I mean, Bowman was faster than Willis. Bowman was shorter than Willis. Willis was
Better
more the
blitzer.
prototype. Willis was
He was the
6'3",
better blitzer. That was the
but
big thing. Bowman
Bowman
blitzed
was
much better.
faster. And Bowman played at Penn State. He had great instincts. I don't remember him taking too many bad
And he
angles.
wore number 11 like LeVar Arrington.
Yeah, I loved LeVar. I loved
I knew you would love
Navarro.
LeVar Arrington. I'll say this. I thought the Kuechly Defensive Player of the Year, I'm still salty about it in 2013. Thought Navarro Bowman should have won it. That 2013 Navarro Bowman season, especially because Willis got hurt really early in that season. That was the year Aldon Smith had the, crazy situation where he was caught at 7 a.m. with his car at a tree, like not good. And yeah, Bowman was just unreal that year, especially that game against the Rams after that Colts game on Thursday night when he blitzed, had 1.5 sacks. Man, maybe I'll give you 2013, Larry, but Willis was special.
Did you see Vish what Kittle told Von Miller?
About okay, I thought maybe you wanted to go back to Matt Ioannidis and
and Corey Littleton.
Corey Littleton
You never
before we
really
went there, but of
you
course
didn't
I
give
didn't
me
see that.
your Ioannidis Littleton
Oh,
thumbs up or thumbs
I
down.
agree with you. Littleton, I'm kind of whatever on because I just feel like
Okay.
linebacker is an easy position for the Niners to scout because they
Right.
just look for a certain type of guy and then they teach it really well on the guy how to play in this scheme, especially when you're playing next to somebody like Fred Warner who does a lot of the harder stuff in coverage. Um, but 100%, Ioannidis is exactly what they're looking for. I think Larry, you and I feel like have been the maybe loudest voices of this throughout the playoffs about the Niners' lack of size in the interior and the fact that Javon Kinlaw didn't look healthy and he was getting moved off the ball a little bit at times. And so they need a big guy in that defensive line. They really do. I think they need to bring back Hassan Ridgeway for sure, but he's a 6th or 7th or 8th man in your rotation. He's not a you plug him in and have him play 40, 35 snaps a game. So they need a starter and it'll open up so much things for Armstead and Bosa and everybody else. So I agree with you on Ioannidis, but I did definitely see what Kittle said about Purdy. I figured that would be the thing we would talk about the entire show. So I was shocked that we touched on Steve Wilks and Ioannidis and Littleton first.
I wanted to make sure to let people get in the room first, and then we'll, mention the sponsors and get into the quarterbacks. We don't want to do the quarterbacks too early.
Oh, okay, got it.
Though I will say this, you brought up defensive linemen, and I did go through the All-Star games. Notre Dame, the Niners went in 94, and they brought in Bryant Young, and he was just absolutely phenomenal. Notre Dame's got a couple really good players in this draft. You know how much I like Michael Mayer, and I'm a big fan of Isaiah Foskey. But Notre Dame's got an undersized defensive tackle named Jason Adamilola, and this guy's 285, plays inside, and just ridiculous quickness, ridiculous explosion, ridiculous, balance, undersized interior, kind of like a Kevin Givens, kind of sort of like a Kevin Givens interior rusher. But man, I watched this guy bull rush some big, strong offensive linemen in some of these all-star games. I mean, just made them look like they were rolling back on roller skates. I mean, it was absolutely incredible. You got to check this kid out, Jason Adamilola.
I'll add him to the list.
Yeah,
I got the college film. I think maybe I got it a couple days ago. I'm starting on quarterbacks, Larry, like I always do. I'll be starting with Bryce Young. So I'll get to these guys. Hopefully, I'll start writing these guys down that you tell me, so I can make sure to get to them before the draft. But yeah,
my daughter's knocking on the door. She came back from Hawaii, and now she's knocking on the door in the middle of my live stream. Okay, here's the quote from George Kittle. He sat down with Von Miller. He was asked about whether Brock Purdy is the future of the 49ers. Kittle reminded Von Miller that Jimmy Garoppolo is a free agent and that Trey Lance hasn't gotten a fair shot yet. And he said, I don't know what's going on with Jimmy. He's a free agent, so whatever happens, happens. Trey Lance is still there. Trey, unfortunately, has not really gotten a fair shot at being an NFL quarterback. He got a full rain game monsoon against the Bears, and he got hurt in the second game. Trey's got plenty of talent. He just needs to get out there and play, which is totally consistent with what I've been saying. Then he said, but you can't talk about Brock Purdy with what he did. He said, but you can't talk about Brock Purdy with what he did. He's fantastic. Our offense was operating at the highest it's been since 2019. In my opinion, it's Brock's job to lose, but there will be competition because Brock will be out until training camp with his surgery. It's going to be interesting, but when you find a guy like that, that can play seamlessly, that can seamlessly jump in, it's his job to lose. So there you go. You want to know who the quarterback is for the 49ers? George Kittle just said it's Brock Purdy's job to lose. Does that surprise you that he was that strong with it?
no, not really. He kind of echoed what Trey Lance said the day before to Rich Eisen.
Which
And
I
what a lot
thought
of
was
us,
incredible.
I mean, yeah, I thought it was honest. Yeah, 100%. And the fact that he had that level of awareness is quite impressive. But at the same time, the way I see it is that it's very consistent with everything that I've said, you've said, anybody's said. That I think the difference is, and where I don't really even think this is really a story, because I think Purdy, the way he played the 8-0, how good the offense looked, how good he looked. I mean, we can go on and be effusive about it. Ultimately, to me, all he earned with that, like I've said, is to be the starter going into camp. And that's where I think Lance still has a chance, Larry. As long as he does his job and plays well. If Purdy, I think that Purdy right now, to me, is going to be the starter moving forward, but it's not like he's just penciled into the job, right? He has to continue playing at the level that he played last year. And to me, that's ultimately going to determine between these two guys who really ends up being the guy. But I wasn't shocked at all by what Kittle said. I after what I heard what Trey Lance said, I appreciated it because it was very honest. It was very blunt. I thought Kittle was also very honest, very blunt. I thought both comments were very reasonable, and they were exactly right about what the state of the 49ers is.
It's really interesting. And then for those, Vish referenced it a couple times there, but on the Rich Eisen show, Trey Lance went on and he was talking about Brock and the quarterback competition coming up. And he said, Trey Lance said, Brock played way too well and Brock played at such a high level and handled himself the right way. I wouldn't want it to be a situation where I'm just handed something and I feel horrible. Obviously, Brock for his injury. He said, then Trey went on to say, I'm excited to just get on the field and compete. That's all I want an opportunity to do. So, he's saying all the right things. I think Kittle is saying all the right things. Now, as far as Purdy, where is, Brock Purdy exactly? And I guess, Brock Purdy went on the radio and gave details on his surgery decision. And I guess he's confident that Dr. Meister He's confident in his doctor, who will be the surgeon in Dallas. He says, in terms of the surgery, going down to Dallas for a surgeon named Keith Meister, well known, and he's the best at doing UCL repairs and surgeries and everything. So I trust him. He does like 200 plus of these a year. So one of the best of the best. So I'm in good hands. Then he basically said, everyone's saying that it would be best for just my career moving forward to get the surgery and get the repair with an internal brace. Still, there could be some question as to getting a hybrid surgery, which is reconstruction with the internal brace. So we're going into it thinking the repair with the internal brace for sure. All the surgeons have said that that's what they're hoping for, and get a 6-month recovery in and be ready for camp. So, and then when the guys said, hey, what's the difference between hoping and, what's the difference between hoping and, whatever the new verdict will be. And he said, yeah, he goes, that's Dr. Meister's call. He's done this year after year with the best of Major League Baseball pitchers. So he's definitely seen this kind of thing happen, and he's going to make the best call, and not just for the heck of it. It's obviously for the best call for my career moving forward. And he knows what's best, and he's going to make the best decision for us. So it'll be good. So basically, Vish, it sounds like he's not going to have the surgery until February the 22nd. So a couple weeks off still, but that the doctor, that he really has confidence in this doctor, and that he's putting it in Keith Meister's hands as to exactly what he sees when he goes in and looks at that elbow. That sounds reasonable, but it also sounds variable. And it sounds like we don't really have a hard line idea on, is Brock going to be back in 5 months, 6 months, 7 months? We don't know. And they've said 6, but then if you look at the timeline they laid out, it's kind of,
it's 5. Yeah.
Yeah, it's 5. So it's like, well, wait a second. Can we not count here? So it sounds like the Niners better be ready to have somebody at quarterback, whether that's not Brock Purdy, whether it be Trey or somebody else, maybe at the beginning of the season, right? Is that your read on it?
Yeah, and even Shanahan said at the end of the year presser, right? He said he called it cool. He said the cool thing about Brock Purdy's injury and the surgery is that at 3 months he's going to start throwing, and he's going to be throwing, and it's going to be ramping up. So he should be like full go throwing at NFL level by 6 months. So I don't know if that means he's just going to be limited for 1 month in training camp. So he's just going to be digesting everything, and then he's going to be full go, not limited throwing after that month. But yeah, you're right. They do need to sign a quarterback. We've had a lot of conversation on who that should be, but ultimately, to me, they're clear on going with these young guys, right? They're not going to sign a veteran quarterback that's going to challenge them, but they do need to sign one with enough credibility where if Purdy's injury maybe causes him to be out for longer, this guy has to be a guy that you can confidently put in and say, we can win a few games with him. So it can't be Josh Johnson is what I'm saying. It has to be, a little bit better than that, preferably if you can get an Andy Dalton, something like that. But yeah,
I'd be okay with a rookie. I really would, as long as you get somebody you like, get a rookie you like and have the cheapest quarterback room and spread that money, because realistically, that third guy, you don't want to waste cap room on that guy, and you do want somebody who can potentially play. So what's the best way to go about it? Get a rookie that you think can play, throw them in there, have a cheap room, and spread that money to Bosa and Ayuk and the rest of your roster.
I think the difficulty with that part of the conversation, though, is right. It's not as much as they found Brock Purdy, right? There's not a lot of Brock Purdy's that you draft, in the 5th, 6th, 7th round that can actually walk in and start in the NFL. Like he showed he's a starting caliber quarterback. Like we saw Bailey Zappi earlier in the year, 4th, 5th round pick, right, in New England. He looked okay, I guess, but you don't know if you can draft a guy and he'll be Brock Purdy, because Brock Purdy also beat out Sudfeld and all of that. Like Brock Purdy was exceptional for a 7th round pick from the first day of the offseason, right, to here. I mean, we all know all the things you said about him during the offseason.
Well, he's the exception, not the rule. That's
exactly. Sure. And that's where I don't know if you can trust that process and just say, we're going to draft a quarterback and not have a veteran. Maybe you draft a quarterback, But then maybe the veteran you bring in isn't Andy Dalton, it's Josh Johnson. But you need to bring in a veteran to load up, beef up this quarterback room, no matter what you do, I think.
MF drops this one in the chat. Oh, I think I just took it up. There we go. He says, does Colton McKivitz have a shot to start next year? This was a rumor that I read today, Vish. And this was one of the NFL people saying that there are rumors out there that the Bears and the Texans are potential destinations for Mike McGlinchey. The Bears have nearly $100 million in available cap room this offseason. And McGlinchey's a, Eastern guy. That's more Midwest, but yeah. So if McGlinchey hits the open market, and the Bears have interest, I bet you anything he gets an offer that exceeds the Niners budget. So I think McGlinchey is almost a lock to move on in free agency. That would be my guess. I think I could definitely see him in Chicago. How popular would a guy like Mike McGlinchey be with the Bear fans? Notre Dame tackle Mike McGlinchey. It's like, how many Notre Dame people there are in the city of Chicago?
Do I?
Yeah, well, I'm just saying to the chat, people don't realize there's an awful lot of Notre Dame alums hanging out in Chicago. Yeah. It would be quite popular for polls to sign McGlinchey. And if he's got $100 million plus in cap room, what's that?
Get him and Komet next to each other.
Exactly. Get a few more season ticket holders out there.
Yeah. I think the Michael McGlinchey conversation is interesting, right? Because there's a large section of this fan base that's decided Mike McGlinchey is the worst player ever. They blame him for everything. He's kind of an easy target to pick on because some of his bad plays are exceptionally embarrassing in some ways, right? The way Micah Parsons threw him with the Reggie White move was kind of embarrassing. It sucks. Micah Parsons is a generational talent, so it's like if you're gonna get thrown by somebody, at least it was him. But at the same time, it happened, right? But Mike McGlinchey is actually pretty good, right? He's very good again in the run game, and I guess he's okay in the pass game. And the thing is, when you stack up a lot of the right tackles in the NFL, he's better than most of them because there's not that many good right tackles in the NFL, right? There's the Lane Johnsons of the world that's like Hall of Famer, and then there's not that many Mike McGlincheys where you can say, I can start that guy for 17 games at right tackle. He can do everything I want in the run game. He's athletic, he's long, he's big, right? And so Mike McGlinchey, to me, is going to get offered a lot of money, Larry. And that's where I heard him say that his wife or his fiance is from the Bay Area and he would like to stay, all of that. But the 49ers don't have that much cap room. They really have enough cap room to sign one of these guys for a big piece of the pie. And the way I see it is, I think with McKivitz and then they draft another guy in the 3rd, 4th, or 5th round, I think that's the route they're going to go because ultimately, the price tag that I think Mike McGlinchey is going to get from one of these teams who have too much money is a little too expensive for Mike McGlinchey. I think it's going to be an overpay. And I think for the 49ers and where they are and how they're building their team, Larry, I think it's in terms of value, Mike McGlinchey is better than Colton McKivitz in the draft pick, right? But in terms of Colton McKivitz for really cheap and the draft pick for really cheap versus Mike McGlinchey for really, really expensive. I mean, look at the deal that Elton Jenkins got. Look at the deal that Conklin got. Mike McGlinchey is not going to be that expensive, but he's going to be under there. I would take McKivitz and the rookie for a little bit cheaper ultimately. And that's where I think he's just going to be too expensive for the Niners, Larry.
Yeah, I kind of agree. But it's a vital position. So it's not like you can just fill in with anybody.
No.
Are you comfortable enough with Colton McKivitz to throw him in there? I do. It's funny. I'll give you a funny Colton McKivitz story. So I've talked to him a few times this year, and the guy's got an interesting personality. And he's, during the bye week, I'm like, yeah, you explore the Bay Area. And he's like, yeah, I did. I said, what'd you do? He said, I went crabbing in the Bay. And so the guy's he likes hunting and fishing, and he's from West Virginia and that kind of thing. So, I go, what do you hunt? And he's like, ducks. We went duck hunting up in Sac and that kind of thing. So I was giving him a hard time. I'm like, I'm not much of a hunter, man. I grew up in the city. So, haven't done a lot of hunting. So now he's coming out of practice and I'm walking across the street, comes up in his truck, gets real close and just starts going quack, quack, quack. He's got the duck whistle or whatever. And
what a goofy guy.
Yeah. He's a character, man. He is a total character, but a good dude, Colton McKivitz.
You're right. Like when you're
he's
looking
tough
at right
and he's
tackles,
not, That would be interesting. I mean, he could do it. No, go ahead. What are you thinking of him as a player?
Oh,
As
I thought we were going to talk about your previous question, which was,
which
do I think McKivitz is like a truly adequate replacement?
yeah, I mean, yeah, where are you with McKivitz, I guess?
Yeah, it's like, look, to get a competent right tackle in today's NFL, I mean, McGlinchey was a top 10 pick. You got to really use a first round pick, right? It's a premium position. You got to either spend a first round pick or sign a guy for a lot of money. Just for where the Niners are financially right now, Larry, I think it might be a stopgap and a rebuild where you try and find a younger guy and develop ultimately down the road, or maybe you find a guy who's who is a high draft pick like an Andre Dillard, right, who's sitting in a stacked offensive line room and not able to get on the field, and you maybe trade a fourth or fifth round pick for him and take a flyer there. But yeah, Larry, I think they're going to have to find a cost effective option just because of where they are up against the cap. I don't think they're going to have the money and they don't have the picks to get what would be, just a starting right tackle for sure. A guy you can just stick out there for 18 games. That's not Colton McKivitz, who's been cut a couple of times, or a young rookie draft pick. I would say best case is if you can find a way to grab a Dillard type player.
I agree. Who's a first round pick. So, and he hasn't been able to get on the field, but I mean, look at Philly's line. So, I mean, Philly's had a pretty good line. So it's not like Dillard is a total stiff, but he has not played a lot of football, at least at the NFL level.
Right.
Joe says, hey, Larry and Vish, what do you guys think about Stetson Bennett as a third option for us? SEC quarterback with experience that could be drafted. Is he too old for you guys? What do you think, Stetson Bennett? I mean, obviously, the one thing about Stetson Bennett, he knows how to play. He does know how to play. It's not like you're gonna get a guy who's like, what? I have no idea. I mean, he's played a lot of big time football, and he's played against some terrific athletes in that conference. They list him at 5'11", 190. I thought he was a little bit bigger than that. It's pretty small, man. That might be a little too small.
Yeah, I have not studied Stetson Bennett. I don't plan to study Stetson Bennett. I guess that's an option, right? He's all the tag cliches you can use for a quarterback, right? He's a proven winner. He's a leader. He's been there. He's experienced. He started in big games. All the cliches are there.
He's on the best, most talented team in all of college football.
Exactly. That Georgia defense, the last 2 or 3 years, look at all the guys that have been picked that are really good players in the NFL from that Georgia defense, right? Like Tyson Campbell and Jordan Davis and Wyatt and Quay Walker and so many players, Stokes. And so, yeah, Larry, I don't have a strong opinion on Stetson Bennett. If Stetson Bennett gets enough hype before the draft, I will watch and study him. Or if the 49ers do draft him, I'll study him. But otherwise, I don't have enough time in my life to be doing that.
I like some of these undersized quarterbacks. I mean, like Dorian Thompson-Robinson. He's kind of lean, 6'1", 205. I kind of like him. I kind of like Jake Hayner. He's about 6 feet.
He's the guy I've heard the most buzz about just on Twitter when you're talking about the late round, this quarterback prototype in the later rounds. The Fresno State guy, Jake Hayner.
He was the MVP of the Senior Bowl. So he had a real, he played well in the Senior Bowl. And obviously he's a 4-year starter and he's won a lot of big games. Yeah. I mean, his mom is Julie Hayner, the KTVU TV anchor woman here in the Bay Area. So, it's that's kind of funny. The guy that I really like is Malik Cunningham from Louisville, who's 6 feet as well, about 188 pounds. But man, you watch this guy run, watch him throw. It's like, he is really, really fun to watch. I'd be very excited if the 49ers got a Malik Cunningham late in the draft. I think that would just be phenomenal. What is another one I was going to ask you is, as far as the roster in the off season, looking at this thing, the 49ers have a lot of questions up front. Like, I don't know how many of these guys they can bring back. They've got 7 defensive line free agents: Ebukam, Amenahue, Ridgeway, Willis, Hyder, McGill, Mo Hurst. The only guys they have actually under contract on their D line are Bosa, Armstead, and Kinlaw. Givens, Drake Jackson, and Kalia Davis. So they've got 6 guys under contract, and they've got 7 free agents. Who would you make the defensive line priority of their, or none? Would you want to retain none of their guys, or if you can retain one of their 7 D line free agents, who's it going to be?
Ebukam.
Over Menahue and Willis. I asked Grant this question the other day, and he said Jordan Willis. I agree with you. I would take Ebukam.
I think Menahue is just going to be a little too expensive. It's when you consider his rush versatility, the fact that he can go inside and outside, the fact that he had a really, really good season, Larry. You look at all the advanced analytics, and Menahue had a really, really strong season, and then he also passed the eye test. He was probably, after Bosa, especially with Armstead hurt as much of the year as he was, Larry, he was probably the second most effective pass rusher on this football team all year, especially with Ebukam being banged up. And so when you add all those things in, I just feel like Ebukam is going to be the most reasonably priced, but, still an impact player. Whereas to me, Willis isn't a starter. He is a rotational piece. Ebukam to me is a starter, and having him as a starter, I think, is important, and they still need that speed element on the other side of Bosa, but Ebukam at least gives you a little bit of credibility there while Drake Jackson develops. So if there's one guy I would keep, it'd be him.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's Sampson. I just think Sampson's an enormous talent. I love Willis. He's nice, and Menahue's definitely this year especially was really nice on this defense because they were thin at tackle, and you could play Charles inside a little bit as a rusher in some 4D end alignments. But Ebukam has got the combination of motor, bend, strength. There's times when he's healthy that he can just beat his guy around the corner. And then, he got dinged up as the season went on. But man, as far as you give me a healthy Samson Ebukam, and I'll go to war every time with that guy.
He had a really strong start to the season, right, when he was healthy, and then he got banged up. And then the other thing is, Larry, he's awesome against the run. He's really strong against the point of attack. He plays with great discipline.
Eric Nelson says, I'm digging these young quarterbacks. Should the 49ers get a veteran or a rookie to fill out the quarterback room? I mean, there's 2 different theories, right? It's a matter of, do you think that you need that veteran to help the rookies kind of watch film and kind of hone their craft? Or do you feel like you need the cap room? And because like the cheapest veterans are still going to cost you, I would say $3 to $8 million in that range, the cheapest of veterans. Even if you go Easton Stick or something like that, it's still going to cost you $3 to $5 million. I think Dalton made 5 when he was with the Bears. I think
Easton Stick will be closer to what Sudfeld made, right? I think that's 3? What you're looking for. Yeah, I think that was 2.5.
Yeah, so I mean, would you? I personally, I would just try to find a good one, and I love the draft this year for it. We just kind of went through a few names there. I think there's some really intriguing players. I mean, the guys I'm talking about, like Malik Cunningham and Jake Haener, these guys are projected to go in like around 4, 5, 6, day 3 guys. So yeah, the Niners have a bunch of picks. Invest one of them in a quarterback that you like. I mean, as simple as that. Or maybe not. Maybe you wait until after the draft if you think the guy that you want is going to go undrafted. Andre says, Vish, sounds like you're not sold on Purdy as the future quarterback. Don't understand why. The guy proved it against playoff defenses. He earned with his play. Why do you hate Purdy so much?
Wow, how the tables have turned, huh? No, it's not about being sold or not being sold.
You're not sold. Why aren't you sold?
Because I'm tired of playing this game of, okay, the guy played 8 games. Let's either put him in the Hall of Fame or write him off. I appreciate how he played this year. I've been effusive praising him game to game, but I'm living in the moment and talking about him in the moment. And if he continues to do this consistently, then I will say he's the guy. Right now, to me, all he's showing is potential that he could be the guy. But that doesn't necessarily mean he's going to seize that opportunity. A lot of us crown Jimmy Garoppolo as the guy and so much more after 5 games in 2017. And the reality is, in 2017, all Garoppolo showed was that he had the ability to be the guy. He didn't end up as the guy, but he ended up as a pretty solid starter. And so we'll see what Purdy ends up as, but I don't see why we need to anoint him today right now.
Fair enough. I mean, I think we're all there's a lot of Purdy fatigue at this point for a lot of people, and they just want to kind of wait and see. These guys had a serious injury, and Trey obviously was billed to be a great player, and he had a serious injury, and now they both have some experience, and let's see what it looks like. But I'm excited about Brock because I think I think he's really trustworthy. I think I love the way he took care of the football this year. I thought he was really looked like a really interesting quarterback prospect, and I wasn't expecting to see that on draft day. All right, let's jump into a couple quick hitters before we get out of here. Let's go down needs. Let's say, let's pretend that, free agency's after the draft, even though it's before. And we're sitting there and it's, first couple rounds of the draft and the Niners don't have a pick and they're waiting around and they're looking for guys to fall and so on and so forth without knowing the prospects at all. If we just wanted to have, let's just say, hey guys, we're not doing anything on the first day of the draft. We're not going to, we don't have a first round pick and we don't plan to trade into the first round. Okay. What are we going to do on that Thursday night? We're going to get together as a group and we're going to put our heads together and we're going to prioritize what we think our draft needs are. So Vish, I'll let you go first. You're going to be the first scout in the room that gets to talk about the roster. You're the first pro personnel guy. What is you're self-scouting the Niners? What's the number one need that you got to have filled?
Yeah, I think we've talked about it, right? Get some size, beef up the interior of the defensive line.
D tackle.
Yeah.
Over edge.
I think ultimately, just when you look at where they are, right, it's a salary cap situation. You're probably going to find that good D tackle to help fill out your roster. Then you're going to be able to get one of those premium edges that are really going to be game changing, right? The ones we always talk about, Ngakoue, that type of a player. Davenport, maybe. I think even Davenport's going to be expensive when you look at an edge that's that young with that much talent, Larry. I think he'll get paid more money than people expect just solely based on potential because he's so gifted. And so that's where ultimately I think that's going to be the cost effective thing. And then it's hard to talk about it, but obviously they need to figure out some sort of plan or have a plan on what they're going to have at right tackle with McGlinchey gone or what ends up happening. The thing is with that situation, you have to kind of see it play out. But if you take the roster from last year and you keep it as is, even with everybody returning, I would say you got to have a little bit more size. They never adequately replaced DJ Jones. And I thought Ridgeway's injury combined with Kinlaw getting hurt early and then him playing, but him not being fully healthy, right? Remember, there was a report that he only played because he wanted to play. The 49ers didn't feel he was healthy enough to play. So when you look at all of that, Larry, I feel like even when you look at last year's roster, even if everybody was coming back, that's the one thing that I would say was a weakness.
Where do you put safety? Jimmy Ward, Tayshaun Gibson, Tarvarius Moore are all scheduled to become free agents. So if you look at safety, they've got Afonga, who's your starting strong safety this year. You got George Odom, who's clearly one of the best special team safeties in the game. One of the guys that they went after last year was Jesse Bates from the Bengals. Where's the need at safety, or is corner the bigger need?
I think corner is the bigger need because the position is premium, but I'm convinced that they're going to be able to bring back Emmanuel Mosley on a one-year deal. In terms of safety, obviously, if they could just bring Gibson back on a one-year deal, he solves a lot of their issues because he's such a savvy veteran who just knows how to play and does his job at a high level. And when you have a defense that's so good with their front seven, rushes the passer so well, you just need veterans who know what they're doing, understand pass concepts, how they're trying to be attacked, and know how to be in the right spot. And Gibson knows how to do that. But ultimately, Larry, I just feel like for whatever reason, the safety market is slow every year. Teams don't really want to sign a lot of veteran safeties. There's a lot of safeties that are good players that teams just move on from. I think that teams look at the physicality threshold for safeties, and you look at the way they collide, the way they hit, they lose their physicality often by 26, 27, and it feels like teams don't want to touch them at the point where they lose their physicality, right? You look at a guy like Gibson, he no longer has the same thumping that he had earlier in his career, but you can see how much him starting so many games has helped him. But teams don't seem really interested in doing that. So I think there's going to be a lot of these veteran safeties that are going to be around at the end of the market that the Niners are going to be able to hang and maybe get one. There's a couple of guys that are young and played really well. Hell, I wanted them to really sign Terrell Edmonds last year. I thought he would have been an outstanding signing. And he had an outstanding year. It went completely under the radar. He was phenomenal for the Steelers this year. We'll see if he gets paid and what happens, but that's a young player that could start at safety for the next 4 years for the 49ers. Now, I don't think they'd be able to afford him, and it really makes sense. But ultimately, Larry, I think when you look at the number of free agents that are available, the way the safety market is moved, there's going to be a veteran player out there that I think the Niners are going to be able to nab, and that is going to be able to start and play well in this defense.
It's interesting. I'll tell you, one of my favorite players in the entire league is Chauncey Gardner-Johnson, the Eagles' strong safety, but he can play the nickel. What do you think of a expenditure that would address, that would go after a guy like Chauncey? I mean, he's an incredible hitter. There's no doubt he'll blow you up. He had a phenomenal year this year. I mean, they say Jesse Bates is the number one free agent safety, then Jordan Poyer, Jimmy Ward, they have third on the list. But what do you think of Chauncey Gardner-Johnson?
Yeah, I think Chauncey Gardner-Johnson's a better player than all of those guys, probably, I would say. Maybe Bates, but I thought Jordan Poyer didn't have that good of a year this year. And I think Jordan Poyer, you want to talk about a guy that's been banged up, doesn't have that same ability to thump and come down. He doesn't look like a guy that wants to hit the same way, but he was also hurt. So maybe it was that. But Larry, what I did want to mention is I think he would be an incredible signing, but I think when you look at how he played for the Eagles this year, how are they going to afford him? He's probably going to make, $12 to $15 million, something like that.
Yeah. I mean, they would have to have to want him and prioritize him.
You know what would have been nice, though? And
Larry? Also, you got Hufanga at strong safety, really, in this defense. The bigger needs probably more for the field safety you can cover.
You know what would have been nice, though?
Who's that?
Instead of signing Chauncey Gardner-Johnson, they could have drafted Chauncey Gardner-Johnson, who was available, but instead they chose to trade down 10 picks and draft one Mitch Wishnowsky. Because
you got to have a punter.
Right, you got to have a punter. Because he had that, I remember when he was drafted, Richard Hightower said he has all these different kinds of punts, right? Punt returners aren't even going to be able to catch the ball because he's going to put all kinds of different spin on it. And to his credit, he's had a couple of good years in a row, but man, that was not.
Well, they were like 29th in punting average, weren't they? Weren't they bottom of the league in punting average?
Yeah, but I think they were top 10 in placing
pinning them inside the 20.
Yeah.
Glory says, "What if Purdy is never the same?" That would be sad.
Possible.
That would be sad. Keen says, "Larry and Vish, you guys are awesome. As far as the D line, help sign Daron Payne, cut Armstead in 2024, and save $18 million." That's an interesting off-season philosophy as well, Vish. Maybe do you go all in on Daron Payne?
Yeah. They're kind of different players to me. I don't know. To me, Daron Payne is more of a true one technique, 2 eye. Like he's more of DJ Jones to Jonathan Allen, who's Eric Armstead in their defense, if that makes sense. And so I don't know if you would really replace Armstead. And to be honest, as much as Armstead's cap hits a part of it, Larry, I feel like Armstead is such a presence in this locker room, especially given that he is now other than Jimmy Ward, the longest tenured player left. Moving off Buckner and Armstead like that, I think would maybe leave a couple of
I don't want
people
to
looking
get off
side-eyed.
Armstead right now. I think Armstead is.
I think he's still playing terrific too.
Yeah, he's playing. He's a foundation piece. Let me hit a couple of these super chats that are kind of loading up here. Jaguayo, my question is: Burford our right guard, and is Brendel our center? I think Burford is out most definitely the right guard. Probably shares it with Nick Zakel. I'm not sure about Brendel because Brendel was a Pro Bowl alternate, and there's always a chance that somebody may pay him. And I think the Niners will have a very low appetite to extend him for big dollars, but he also may get a very team-friendly deal done to stay. I could see that as well. Eric says, what about Gutierrez as right tackle? I love Alfredo. That would be cool. It would be cool. I don't know how the Niners think of Alfredo. Caesar says, Patrick Willis doesn't make the Hall of Fame. Fair or foul? Foul! Come on, put P. Willis in. Andre says, hey, Jimmy, go ahead.
Speaking of which, so I was just looking at next year's class. I'm not sure if he's going to make it because next year Demarcus Ware made it this year. But next year Julius Peppers is up. He's probably going to make it in his first ballot for sure. Antonio Gates is up. He's probably going to make it in his first ballot. And then there's obviously a few other names that didn't make it. I don't know. It becomes, and then when Kuechly gets up, it's going to turn into a thing. I don't know. I don't get the Hall of Fame. I don't get the voting. I don't really get how the process works. I think the criteria is so different for different positions. There's so many biases, but man, him not being a Hall of Famer just doesn't feel right to me, Larry.
The Football Hall of Fame is weird. Yeah, I mean, so Andre Reed is a Hall of Famer, but Roger Craig, the 49er running back, is not. What? I mean, Andre Reed was never the best receiver in football, ever. Roger Craig had 1,000 season and was the offensive player of the year in the league. Yeah. That's what he did individually. He's also the only guy ever to make the Pro Bowl as both a running back and a fullback. And if you go back to the 70s, the 80s, the 90s, and the 2000s, I believe the only all-decade running back from all those decades that's not in the Hall of Fame is Roger Craig. Roger Craig was the original 1,000. Also, I'll say this. We all know football. It's pretty rare that you go into a locker room after the end of a game and the receivers had 145 yards receiving and the running backs had 190 yards rushing. It's usually a running game or a receiving game. And everybody who knows the Niners knows that Jerry was so out there in the stratosphere as far as production that the players, the offensive players that played with him were actually had their numbers suppressed from playing with Jerry, not inflated. And so Brent Jones has a better Hall of Fame resume than he actually looks like. And Roger Craig does too. And it's like, these guys played with Jerry. Only one guy could score, and Jerry scored tons. But guess what? Jerry kind of needed that for his personality. Roger was super special. And I think that if Bill Walsh were alive today, he would be in the Hall of Fame because he would have absolutely made sure of it. That's how good Roger was. And it's a damn shame if that 1990 NFC Championship game fumble against the Giants keeps him out because he was a special.
You think that's what's keeping him out? You think that's what's keeping him out?
Yeah, partly. I think mostly that Walsh died. And Walsh was the advocate. And also Walsh had such a clout within the game that he could talk about how the running backs in the evolution of the pass game were not, the workload was not as heavy, so their numbers weren't as strong. I mean, you could make an argument that the greatest 49er team of all time was the 1984 49ers that beat Marino and the Dolphins at Stanford and went 15-1.
Not 89.
Well, you could argue 89, but I'm saying 84. A lot of people think 84 and 89 were the top. They went 15-1 in 84. It was closer to Joe's. I mean, it was a younger Joe, and it was pre-Jerry. So maybe not. Maybe 80. Maybe you're right. Maybe 89. But if 84 was one of their best teams, Roger Craig scored 3 touchdowns in the biggest game of the year for maybe the Niners' best team. He was outside Joe. You could have argued Roger could have gotten the Super Bowl MVP over Joe, and he just didn't. So I don't know. To me, you ask me, I think Roger Craig belongs in the Hall of Fame. Andre says Jimmy against Purdy in the playoffs is night and day. Well, I agree. Hey, let's finish with this. This is our last live stream between me and Vish before the Super Bowl. Let's finish with the Super Bowl, Vish. Give me your quick thought on what you think we're going to see on Sunday. Where are you going to watch it? How do you like? Do you want to watch the Super Bowl? Do you watch it differently when the Niners are in it, as opposed to just where obviously it's going to be Eagles Chiefs here? Do you do the party? Do you go family, friends? You want to watch alone? What's your routine on Super Bowl Sunday, or do you mix it up?
Yeah, I mix it up based on my interest in the game. So the less interested in the game I am, the more social I want to be. The more interested I am in the game, the less I want to be surrounded by people who maybe like to talk a lot about the game but don't know a lot about the game, or people who constantly ask questions about the basics, or the people who are there to yell about the commercials. So that's family and friends. No offense to them, but that's not enjoyable to me. So yeah, and this game, it's been hard for me to kind of drum up interest just because there was an emotional investment and a grind of the season going through the season with the 49ers. And so I took kind of a week break from, watching football a little bit, studying just to do these shows. And then I'm starting on draft stuff. I don't know what I'm going to do for the game yet. I'm ultimately going to just kind of play it by ear and decide. But I've gone back and forth on who I think is going to win. I still keep going back and forth on it, but ultimately I think Kansas City is going to win. I think Mahomes is it feels like the year of Mahomes to me. And gosh, Larry, I just have to keep saying it. He's the greatest quarterback ever.
Mahomes is the greatest quarterback ever.
We've never seen anything like this. He walked in year one, had one of the greatest seasons we've ever seen, and was a D Ford offsides away from going to the Super Bowl. Year two, he dislocates his kneecap halfway through the year. They win the Super Bowl, and year three, they go back to the Super Bowl. He's on one leg essentially with no offensive line, and he makes some of the greatest throws we've ever seen. Year four, back in the AFC Championship game, he plays poorly. We've never seen a quarterback from year one, Larry, have this much success, and they put the entire team on him. And Mahomes is the one quarterback that it feels like from day one, they throw, and that's how they win games. And you can keep putting the game on him, and you'll never make the big mistake. He's incredible inside of the pocket, the way he processes his feel for leverage, defenders, his awareness in the pocket to kind of shift his body, shift his arm angles to create space within zone coverage to throw, how his creativity outside of the pocket, his arm strength, his accuracy, and then let alone the clutch factor, Larry, because he's got that too. Other than the Bengals game, he's basically come through in just about every big moment he's had to. He's had a couple of rough games in there too, but consistently down to down, I don't think we've ever seen a quarterback start their career and play at this high of a level, and his story's not written yet, right? Like even Brady wasn't this guy in year two, year three, year four, year five. He won the first three Super Bowls as a key cog in a great team, not as the team. And look at this, Larry. And then physically, it's the best, arguably the best I've seen. I've seen Marino live, but I can see how special the throwing is now. Rodgers was a special thrower. Mahomes is in that conversation, and then there's no superlatives for it, Larry, and I think he ultimately pulls it out.
I agree. Legendary says it's the 84 Niners still holds the franchise best D ever. Andrew Martinez says, I don't see Kansas City losing another Super Bowl. I don't either. I think when you've won the Super Bowl and then you've lost a Super Bowl, I think you're going to show up in that third Super Bowl with an advantage because you know how terrible it feels to lose the game.
Right.
And you know the contrast, the parade. I just think that means that you're going to have an unbelievably motivated Chiefs team. And I really believe in the Chiefs. I think the Chiefs.
Sorry, my bad.
I was just going to. L'Jarius Sneed was limited in practice with the knee injury, but Kadarius Toney was a full participant. I think
He's going to
most
be
of
a
those
big part
guys are
of the
going to get
game.
out there. What's that?
They said he's going to be a big part of the game. There was a report that Kadarius Toney was a massive part of the game plan. And then I think Larry also, in addition, I think this is the most complete team that Kansas City has sent to the Super Bowl. This is the best defense they've had with Mahomes. They revamped their secondary completely, got rid of the Matthew Sorensen, who are the two liabilities. Justin Reed is really good. Those young corners are talented. McDuffie's talented.
Yeah, he's having a good
Jalen Watson
finish too.
Jalen Watson's gifted. And then they can run the ball. Pacheco is really good. Andy Reid was forced to get those 2 tight end, 3 tight end sets right in the second half against Cincinnati with all those wide receiver injuries, which was probably the best thing that could have happened to the Chiefs offense with their ability to run the ball and kind of protect Mahomes' leg. Gosh, I hope it's not, Larry. I see Titus Moeller puts in the chat, who do I want to win? Like, I really could care less. I feel like I'm not going to be too happy whichever team wins. Like, there's something about Kansas City winning because of how devastating losing the 2019 Super Bowl was for me as a fan. That's just icky. And then there's something about like Philadelphia winning just because of how their fans are. And given that one of my good friends, is a Eagles fan, and I've heard enough crap from him for the last 2 weeks that, gosh, I wanted to see him devastated and for them to lose. So if both teams could lose, as Christian McCaffrey said, Larry, I'd be in cloud 9.
I'm going Chiefs to win 35-31. More of a shootout. MVP, Isaiah Pacheco.
Oh, do you really think how
Isaiah
bad would
Pacheco.
Mahomes have to play for them to not give him the MVP, Larry?
I think what it's going to be is it's going to be a great game for Mahomes. And they're going to move the ball via the pass, but they're going to get inside the red zone and they're going to Isaiah Pacheco it. I think he's going to score 4 touchdowns. Isaiah Pacheco, 4 touchdowns. They're going to be short plays. Mahomes is really going to be the star, but the MVP is going to Pacheco. Eagles lose 35-31. Kansas City gets it done.
Wow.
High
You
scoring
think
game.
Andy Reid is going to line up and run the ball in the red zone? I would make them to play duck, duck, goose, ring around the rosy, jump around, huddle up, and then throw a little backwards pass or behind the back pass to Kelsey on a screen before Andy Reid just lines up and runs it 4 straight trips in the red zone for a touchdown.
3 rushing touchdowns, 1 passing touchdown for Pacheco. I've got the vision. 3
Did you
rushing
bet this?
touchdowns.
Did you bet this? You're speaking this into existence. Is this like some random bet that you placed?
I haven't bet it yet, but I like it. I like Isaiah Pacheco, MVP. Mahomes throws the ball around, moves it up and down the field, but they lean on Pacheco in the red zone. And Pacheco has 1 long touchdown run, kind of a longer touchdown run. But he has 1 receiving touchdown, 3 rushing touchdowns, 4 TDs for the rookie, Isaiah Pacheco, and Kansas City gets it done. I said that was the last one, but let's finish with this because the awards came down tonight and we should throw them out to people. The Man of the Year award goes to Dak Prescott. The NFL has renamed the rushing title for Jim Brown, which I don't think I would do. I'd rather it be named for Walter Payton. I think Walter Payton was a better person than Jim Brown. Go look up Jim Brown.
Yeah,
I guess. Walter Payton's
I guess if you're
guy.
talking about character, it's hard to.
I'd go with sweetness there, but it's a Walter Payton Man of the Year award, so you can't have the Walter Payton rushing title. That's too much.
If you're talking about running backs, right? Jim Brown was such an alien in his time. He was so dominant compared to everyone else. It's hard to argue against what he did.
Right. Jim Brown is in the Hall of Fame for 2 sports. Do you know what the second sport is?
I didn't know he played a second sport.
Lacrosse. He's in the Lacrosse Hall of Fame. Yes.
That's crazy.
Jim Brown. Hey, MVP of the league, Patrick Mahomes. You agree?
What else is there to say? Yeah, of course. Of course.
Hall of Fame, Joe Thomas, Darrelle Revis, DeMarcus Ware.
So I thought Ware would have made it in his first ballot, so I'm not mad that Ware made it. Rondé Barber should have been a long time ago. Don't find that one crazy. Joe Thomas and you would be first ballot. Revis and you would be first ballot. Zach Thomas is the one that's kind of iffy. I guess he's been there for a while, but come on, Larry, 5 first-team All-Pros in 7 years. I thought Patrick Willis would extend that. I mean, he was the best linebacker in the NFL from day one, year one, Larry. I don't know. I feel like I'm pretty objective when it comes to the 49ers. I don't just say because they were a 49er they should get this accolade, but truly, Larry, I think the best way to describe it is that he was definition of the prototype, right? That was the word we used. Like when we talk about a linebacker, if you would draw one up in a lab and put him on the field, you would draw Patrick Willis, as fast as he was, as physical as he was, instinctive, smart, tough.
Great player. Great player. By the way, the Hall of Fame class, Darrelle Revis, Revis Island, Joe Thomas. It's a 9-man class. Rondé Barber, the great defensive back. Don Coryell. They used to call it Air Coryell with the Chargers. Chuck Howley, who was the MVP of the Super Bowl. Ken Riley, cornerback. Zach Thomas, the linebacker. DeMarcus Ware. And don't forget, Joe Klecko. Joe Klecko played with Mark Gastineau on the New York Stock Exchange line, and it was awesome. It was Marvin Powell. Klecko was one of the strongest nose guards, and just had. I think you look it up. I mean, I got to look it up before I leave here. Joe Klecko had a ridiculous sack season, I believe, for interior tackle. Joe Klecko was just a crazy.
He had a 20.5 sack season.
Is that what it is?
20
and a half sacks. 20 and a half sacks.
It's kind of an outlier year though relative to the rest of his career.
No, I know, but I mean, what was his dimensions?
It's insane, yeah.
When the guy was a total run stuffer, and he had 20 and a half sacks. The sack exchange, Gastineau, Klecko, it was awesome. Also, wait, where's the other one?
Was that a like who was the other guy in the sack exchange?
It was Mark Gastineau.
He's in the Hall, right?
Probably.
Yeah. So is this a case of like Dana Stubblefield having 14 and a half sacks because he played next to Bryant Young, or?
I mean, Gastineau was incredible. Klecko though was unbelievably strong.
I didn't watch. I didn't watch them, so I'm just asking you the tough questions.
They were an incredible group. Let's just say that it was an incredible group of players. But what do you think? Mahomes wins the MVP. You're happy with that?
Yeah, it's impossible to argue against. Best ever, Larry. Best ever.
Also, Coach of the Year, Kyle Shanahan was up for it, but it goes to
Daboll.
Brian Daboll. He deserved it, don't you think?
Yeah, hard to argue against it. Shanahan also deserved it, I think. But, it's hard to say Daboll shouldn't have been the Coach of the Year, really. Can I say that? No.
You want to say Daboll's not the Coach of the Year?
No, I said I can't say that he's not. Like, I can't – like, I think Shanahan also deserved it, but so did Daboll. Like, I can't say now that Daboll has received the award, Shanahan should have gotten it over him. But if Shanahan had gotten it, I wouldn't have said Daboll should have gotten it over him too, if that makes sense. They were both deserved.
You know who I thought really was going to get it and didn't get it? Doug Peterson.
Sirianni.
Doug Peterson.
Oh, okay.
I mean, that to me was I thought very, very likely. But Shanahan, I thought, had a good year, but not Coach of the Year. Daboll, yeah, there you go. 4 more likes, we get to 100. All right, that's going to do it for us. Hour and 24 minutes in, and we'll let Vish get on with his night. It's getting late in the Central Time Zone. It's almost 11 o'clock at night. Vish, you're the man. I just want to thank everybody in the chat. Thanks for being proud supporters of the Krug Show. We currently have 13,591 subscribers. If you're in the chat and you haven't hit like and subscribe, please hit like and subscribe. If you like it, I think that helps other people find the shows. And if you subscribe, you'll be alerted, little alert every time we go live. And then, of course, if you want to be one of our club members, I think our club members are paying $4.99 a month to be club members.
Very exclusive club.
Very exclusive, extremely exclusive. It's so exclusive that, it's so we can't even tell you how exclusive it is. There are meetings going on. I consult these people with my life. But there's some good stuff there for some good content for those people. Tomorrow on the Krug Show, we have a very exciting Friday for you. Jordan Elliott's going to join us. We're going to talk a little basketball NBA trade deadline rehash with Grant Napier tomorrow on the show. And Anish Sharaf, who I was telling you about the other day.
The Eagles play-by-play.
Yeah, the Panthers play-by-play guy is going to give us his thoughts on Steve Wilkes. So Anish Sharaf, Grant Napier, and Jordan Elliott's a big Friday, an action-packed Friday on the Krug Show.
Let me ask you this.
Yes.
As a Pistons fan, I was kind of upset that they traded for the Warriors. Boy, I'm a little sick of the Pistons, being this farm league where we develop a few decent players, then we flip them for more assets and more young players who ultimately don't develop, and then we have no surrounding pieces for those younger players. Like I thought when Cade could come back, have a little decent roster and make a playoff push next year. It's not the case. But, yeah, how do you feel about the Warriors getting rid of Wiseman?
Well, I mean, I think that it's interesting, right? Why? Because, he either had to be I've been saying it, play him or trade him. I thought that they would be able to get more than they did get. But at the end of the day, I love Gary Payton, and I'm so glad they got Gary Payton back. Now, I wanted more. I was hoping for Saddiq Bey. The announcement was they traded for Saddiq Bey. Then they turned around and moved Saddiq Bey to the Hawks for a bunch of seconds, and then they turned around and traded those seconds for Payton. Payton's 30. Saddiq Bey, I think, would have been a really nice player.
So good for the Warriors.
Oh, I know. Saddiq Bey was the guy that I wanted. I actually predicted that they would go for Saddiq Bey. So I would have liked to have gone with Saddiq Bey. Instead, they went with Payton. Now, they do have a killer defensive player, and Payton, I think, is one of the best on-the-ball defenders in the entire league, and they know he fits in personality-wise, which is a big thing for them because they're big on their culture and who fits and who doesn't fit. They don't like to take risks, especially this late in the year. So they didn't take any risk. They know who Gary is, and they know what he makes, and they know what he's about. And so they got a player that can contribute for a player that wasn't contributing.
And he knows the system. He knows his role.
I just don't. I think the trade could look really, really bad if James Wiseman fulfills his potential. And now on that team with all those young pieces, I think it was a win-win. I think the Warriors win in that they get a killer defender and a better chance to win the title and a player they know and like. And then the Pistons win because they got the bigger talent, the younger player, the player with more upside. And I think that's a real big one. But also the other factor here is that the buyout market is next. And if you look closely at the buyout market, there's Kevin Love, and he's fallen out of the rotation with the Cavs. And a lot of people think he's going to get bought out. Well, you know what? If you can add Kevin Love, now you've gotten a big man who can really pass, and you've added a defender. That I think Kevin Love on this Warrior team, I've always thought it would be spectacular. Then there's Dwayne Dedman, and he's a 33-year-old journeyman center, but he can do some good things. And they waived him. The Spurs waived him, so he's available. Then there's Rashawn Holmes from Sacramento. And a lot of people think that he's going to get bought out. Rashawn Holmes is signed through next season. I mean, he's a nice player, man. I mean, they got Sabonis, and I mean, you're talking about a guy who, a year or two ago was averaging like 14, 7 and almost 2 blocks a game. So I really like Rashawn Holmes, and so there's options there. Then there's Serge Ibaka. and he's a big man who can shoot the ball, and he's a veteran and offers quite a bit. So, I mean, there's Nerlens Noel, who they say may get bought out. And so there's some center candidates out there that could get bought out. And that would,
and yet if my Pistons give James Wiseman a second contract, the way I'm going to be upset, man, that front court of him and Marvin Bagley is going to be one of the worst, especially when Bagley gets healthy. It's going to be one of the worst defensive front courts the NBA has ever seen.
Kev says, what time is Grant Napier on tomorrow? I think 4:00. Let me double check that, but I think 4:00 in the afternoon, we're going to talk to Grant and get his thoughts on the NBA trade deadline, what the Kings did, what the Warriors did.
What the Pistons didn't do.
Yeah, I think 4 p.m. Pacific. Friday at 4 p.m. Pacific, the great Grant Napier will be in the house. Val Ramos says, beat content. I think he meant best content. Well, there you go. Val came back. What else? Who else is in here that I wanted to get a mention in?
Who are you going to pick out?
I know.
There's an argument going on in there.
Val Ramos. Grant said Larry was biased. It's full of S. I have no idea. What that is. Do I even want to get involved in that?
What would you do?
I don't know. Titus says, I have high hopes for Keegan Murray. All right. I do too. Oh, MF has asked this question a couple times. Vish, do you like the White Sox?
I don't watch baseball. It's
at
one
all?
sport I don't follow. No, I follow the sports I follow heavily are football, basketball, soccer, and tennis. Baseball is the one I don't follow.
All right, man. Awesome stuff as usual. I've got a couple spots to play. I'll let you out of here early. Get on with the rest of your night. Thank you for your time, sir. We will see you next Tuesday on your channel to recap the Super Bowl.
100%. As always, thank you, Larry. You're killing it right now. Keep doing what you're doing. I'll see you at 14K next week.
Yes, I promise. I'll be there. The great Vish Kumaran. All right. That was good. I hope everybody enjoyed that little 49er conversation about some of the topics around the Niners. I got a brand new Telmetrics commercial. We're going to play it right here.
And thanks to Tony Cassera and the good people at Cassera's Italian Menswear. They are housing the Krug Show t-shirts, and they're a proud sponsor of the show as well. The Krug Show t-shirt, the Krug Show podcast t-shirt is available there at their store in Dublin. Their address is 7372 San Ramon Road in Dublin, California. And go see Tony Cassera and get yourself a Krug Show t-shirt and support the show. And special thanks to our sponsor, New York Style Italian Sausage. That's right, NewYorkStyleSausage.com is their website. Phenomenal product, whether it's the breakfast sausage, the Italian mild, the Italian spicy, the chorizo. You cannot go wrong with New York Style Italian Sausage. Once again, NewYorkStyleSausage.com, often imitated, never equaled. And they are a proud sponsor of the Krug Show. Thanks to them as well.
All right, welcome back to the Krug Show. Larry Krueger with you. Final moments here on the show. Thanks to everybody in the chat. Sharon says, let's go King Larry. I don't know about King Larry. I don't know if I like that. That's LeBron. LeBron's the king. Carlo P says, Larry here. Larry Krueger here for Telmetrics. TELMETRIX.co. Check that out. Telmetrics. Also hit the like and subscribe, and that will help the channel. We already mentioned that. MF says he loves the music on the Telmetrics commercial. I thought it was really well done. And thanks to Casey Bateman and all the people at Telmetrics for being proud sponsors of the Krueg Show. All right. Good day today. We were on for a long time today. We did a 4-hour live stream on the NBA trade deadline and the Warriors and trading Wiseman. And I really don't like it, but I can kind of see the positives now, I guess, a little bit better than I did this afternoon. But I was screaming and yelling about it, so go check that out. Go check that out. Always good screaming and yelling. MF says Geno Smith won the comeback player of the year. He was healthy last year. Yeah, but he wasn't good. This year, he's much better. That's why. Kevin F. making some New York style Italian sausage right now. Look at that. Look at that. He's got his New York style Italian sausage. What do you think of that, Pasquale?
We grew up with a Sunday dinner. That means no matter how busy you were.
There you go. We grew up with the Sunday dinner. Kev, love to hear that. Absolutely love to hear it. No, but thanks to all of you. Check out all the new videos that we've got going on the channel. My son is grinding through putting together these killer videos, and they're getting lots and lots of views, and it's doing great things for the channel. So thank you to him, the great Kev, and he's fantastic. And thanks to, of course, Len Dempsey and Danny and Rye and, of course, Baller and Frank and all the people that have contributed to the Krueg Show this week and this year. Onward and upward. All right. Hope everybody has a great night. We will see you tomorrow on the Krueg Show.
Yeah, never met a man I've been scared of. Careful, you won't get exactly what you asked for. Handful, whatever you bring me getting handled. I answer to no one, I don't need to hassle. Yeah.